Top Med Talk.
Hi, it's Desiree Chappell here and the Top Med Talk team. I hope you're staying safe during these times. We wanted to say thank you for downloading Top Med Talk. This piece is not specific to the COVID-19 crisis, but we are covering it daily. If you want more of that information, you can find it on topmedtalk.com. Now, in the meantime, we are continuing to champion perioperative medicine like we always have done. And we're working with our academic partners as the crisis continues to bring you our normal scheduled content. We also want to say thank you to our sponsors, specifically Edwards Life Sciences, for their generous support. I hope you enjoy this podcast.
This piece is taken from the Perioperative Medicine Shared Interest Group's 2018 annual conference, Measuring, Managing and Minimising Risk, which was held in association with the Australian and New Zealand Society of Geriatric Medicine and the Internal Medicine Society of Australia and New Zealand. Don't forget to check out the show notes on topmedtalk.com for more details. Have a listen.
The first speaker is Don Campbell, who's Professor of Medicine at Monash University. He works there as a general physician as well as regularly at Alice Springs Hospital. He was president of the Internal Medicine Society of Australia and New Zealand about 4 or 5 years ago. Our next speaker is Professor Charlie Corke. Charlie was Director of Intensive Care at Geelong Hospital for many years, but has now backed off from his administrative position and has recently stepped down as President of the College of Intensive Care Medicine. But beyond his clinical contribution to intensive care, I think some of the fantastic work that Charlie's done has been working in the area of difficult communication scenarios in intensive care and has really driven the training program in intensive care around that and improving the quality of communication and teamwork amongst intensive care doctors. Okay, our third speaker is Kerin Fielding, who's an orthopaedic surgeon from Wagga Wagga. That town, so good they named it twice. And you know the CanMeds diagram of what a doctor is supposed to be? Well, Kerin's it. She's skilled, she's an orthopaedic surgeon, does hips, knees, backs. She's a great teacher, very popular with the med students and the trainees in Wagga. She's a great collaborator, manager, leader. She's on the RACS College Council. And she's a great communicator, as you'll see soon. I've got a couple of questions, or 3 questions so far, so keep them coming, but different topics. And the team keeps on coming up. And I think, Don, you talked about, coaching teams. Who are the coaches? It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like I don't follow the round ball game. It's a silly game, but I know that there's someone in Britain called Alex Ferguson, and he's incredibly important. And he's a coach of one of the teams. Sorry? Well, whatever. Like I say, I don't follow the round ball game. But it struck me that probably 20 or 30 years ago, the coaches weren't people that people knew about. You knew about George Best and the stars on the field, but now the community understands that the team is more likely to win if it has a great coach and manager, and they're becoming celebrities in their own right. But who are the coaches? Do we need coaches for the teams in hospitals?
I think one of the important things is to look at work is the task plus the conversation. It isn't just the techie bit, it's the talking to people. And if you're going to work in a team, it's about trust. How do we establish trust? And leadership in an Australian context is, I can do it, I'll show you how to do it. I'm not asking you to do anything I couldn't do myself. And then it's supporting you to do what we need to do. What's the role of the coach? We have a view of an organisation as a hierarchy of, and that's borrowed from manufacturing industry from the 1910s. The way we actually get work done is in networks and communication, and me doing my job properly so you can do your job perfectly. I think the coaching is around how to manage the conversations, and we don't need the layers of administratum. What we need is people that we trust, who can help us get our jobs done so the next person can do their job perfectly. And the role of coaching and mentoring, I couldn't even spell mentoring. I thought mentor was something that came in a packet that you got when you went to the pictures, but apparently not. So it's how do we get people functioning at their best as members of teams. I'm a Melbourne Football Club supporter, and we are crap. But we've been crap up until now, and we hope to be better in the future. Other teams have a culture, and it's how do you promote the culture? And it's about the culture is that we will support each other so that we can all do our job well. It's building trust through communication. That's enough from me.
I think you have to choose the champion. So I don't think the coach will be the surgeon or the anaesthetist or anybody in any particular site. And with all due respect to administrators, my husband was an administrator, so I have to be nice to them, but they're probably not the right ones either. But I think that you have to choose locally who's your coach. You pick the person with the passion, and the person with the passion, with the leadership and who can communicate to everybody will bring the teams together. That's what I think.
And I'll just turn it around and say followership is also something that we're now thinking about a lot more, and being a good follower involves expressing trust and taking advice and being loyal. And if people can do that within the team, then it's very important. You need leaders and followers. If you've got either group can mess it up terribly. So it's about understanding all of those things to make it work.
So how are we going to teach followers?
Well, it's followership. It's being a good follower. So for me, it's not walking in and taking over. It's if someone's doing a good job, I will see what I can do to help them. I'm at a stage in my life where walking in and taking over is quite the wrong thing to do, and recognising that. It takes quite a long time for some people to recognise that.
Yeah. Don, have you had experience with this at Monash?
Yeah. Please forgive me for the use of sporting metaphors, and I will claim a quote from, I think it was Arthur Koestler, everything in life I've learned about mankind I have learned through sport. So if Koestler can say that, I reckon I could say that sporting metaphors are about how we build teams. I've worked across a range of hospitals, states, countries even, and one of the tests I have for our junior staff, some of the people I've worked with when they were juniors are in the room, and my test is which is a unit where good people turn bad when they go in there, and you will all, I can see heads nodding. So we know which those units are. The leadership is provided by the head of the unit. It's the fish rots from the head first, but equally a good culture. And there's people here who worked in the Austin ICU. I worked with Jeff Guttridge once, and I said to Jeff, I made an appointment to see him. He said, what do you want to make an appointment for? And I said, I want to find out how you manage your team. I said, you got guys with egos the size of houses, and they all work well together in a team. How do you do it? He said, I just put it down to being slightly hard of hearing.
So, Kerin, talking about, I know orthopaedic surgeons are often painted as in a stereotype, but is it too much to expect orthopaedic or any surgeon to be good other than as a technician? I had a shoulder replacement myself 10 weeks ago, and if you had given me the choice of someone who was really good technician versus someone who knew a bit of medicine and cared and communicated well, but wasn't real good at actually putting the screws in the right place, I would have been torn. Actually, I wouldn't. Yeah,
but the reality is, if you look at the evidence, that actually we're all pretty good surgeons. That the evidence is there that 97% or something of surgeons operate up here at this high technical level, and there are not very many of us that are outliers. And the outlier problem is starting to be addressed. So I think once you sort that out and you talk to those people who have terrible results on the joint registry and say, look, mate, we're doing all that peer pressure stuff now, And you know, the colleges and the societies have become a lot firmer on looking at outliers, and I think that is a big change that's coming very quickly. Then the reality is, I mean, you know, we can all stand on a pedestal, but surgery is not that difficult. Like, it's difficult, but we all do it okay. So then we come down to how are we going to save money and how are we going to sustain our profession? And we're not going to sustain our profession by operating on everyone who walks in the door. And so unless the surgeon is purely the technician locked away in an ivory tower, just doing that, and you guys or somebody sends him the patients or her the patients, it won't work. We need to have clinicians. We need to be able to diagnose stuff. We need to be able to look at the patient and work out which patient will do well with an operation, which won't. And there's lots of models around the world. Toronto's got the hernia hospital, and where the surgeons just do, you know, they just operate and the hernias come through the door, and that works quite well from a funding model if that's all they're doing. But you know, we can't. It's not sustainable in Australia to have hernia surgeons, to have left toe surgeons, to have knee surgeons. We can't do that. It's not going to work. We have a major rural and regional problem. We have a huge workforce issue in those areas. We need to think back about generalists again. So if you're going to be a generalist surgeon, you actually need to know what you're doing. You need to be able to be a diagnostician and a clinician. So I think we have to rethink how we've been training.
So, all right.
Is the answer to your question. I think there's a big shift in the super specialising coming back to generalism. We've been talking about that for a few years now at very high level, about particularly for rural and regional. It's not sustainable to have every single type of super specialist in those sites in our country.
So you're saying that the technical challenge isn't the issue, but the communication and the teamwork.
Yeah, everything else is the issue, which is why the college has gotten on board with this new. I'm sure you've all heard about it. We were the first college to respond to all the bullying and harassment stuff, and we've made a huge inroad into that with courses and trying to train up our doctors and trying to, you know, improve the role modelling of behaviour, and hopefully you've all seen all the signs in theatre and all the stuff that we've done. It's been a very, very, very big program, and it's now mandated. You can't actually have trainees, and we've already had to disaccredit some sites, and trainees have been removed from some sites because of behavioural problems, and that will continue for quite a while. So we've taken a very hard line on it at the college, and we've got lots of professional skills coming in. So I think one of the really big moves in surgery is that we've realised how important non-technical skills are. We've got courses in non-technical skills. It's something we talk about all the time, and we've got our trainers doing it, our supervisors doing it. You know, you can't really open your mouth at the college anymore unless you've done half of these courses. So, which is good, and it's been difficult because, you know, surgeons can be belligerent sometimes and they don't like to do things, but I think everyone's realised that we need to move on and that we need to think about the non-technical stuff. So teamwork and collaboration. If you came to some of our meetings, you would be amazed at how many times those words are said. It's language, communication, language, speaking differently, talking about, you know, this new nice language.
It's
touchy-feely for orthopaedics, eh?
It's interesting seeing the questions coming up, and they're almost anticipating the answers that you're giving. So maybe all three of you could talk about team-building activities, or how you've, not in the rah-rah, well, maybe they are, but you know, the black hat. Having the difficult conversation in intensive care, or the processes and systems that you were talking about, Don. So what examples have you got of that, or how should we do that well?
Okay. I asked Norman Swan about this sort of stuff.
Yes, the microphone.
Yep. I think Australians really only understand one model of leadership. Second lieutenant from the front, by example, day in, day out. How long's your track record? About 20 minutes. You're as good as your last case, you know. They don't give a toss about how good you think you are or how good you think you were. The older you get, the better you were. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And around the leadership of the team, I think, what are the three features of high-performing teams? We're in the room before the meeting starts. No one comes late to theatre. The boss is there first. So we're in the room before the meeting starts. We take it in turns to speak. We read the body language. Those are the three key features. And the one I'd point to is the role of leadership and language in regenerating organisations. I can tell a quick story against myself. In our hospital, Gen Med, we were the best at slagging off the ED. No one came close, right? We were the best, definitely. And I read this thing that said, if you want to change the culture of the organisation, the boss has to do the example. So I changed the way I spoke about ED, and miraculously our unit stopped slagging off ED. And after 6 months, I got a bit frustrated, started slagging off ED. And one of our physicians, whose name is Ralph Junkersdorf, Ralph stood up in Morning Report and said, look, we've started slagging off ED again, we'd stopped and I hate it. Can we stop? And I said, Ralph, that's my fault. I give you a promise, I will not slag off ED again. So Ralph called us out. That's leadership. That's a behaviour enacted, embodied. Thanks.
And I just endorse that. We have to remember that we're modelling things all the time. Everything we do is a role model to trainees and nurses, and what we do is watched and is seen, and we do influence everything. So in order to make it work, we have to role model excellence, otherwise there's no hope of it happening.
And we have to be brave. We have to call this behaviour out and say, it's just not acceptable. So we had a particular person in our department. It's only small. It's 8 surgeons in orthopaedics in Wagga. And one of them was, effing this and essing this and everything in the meetings. In front of all our medical students, our trainees, absolutely appalling behaviour. Rude to other colleagues as well as to the registrars. Completely unrealistic questioning. And it was just consistently happening every single Thursday morning X-ray meeting. And, we all got sick of it. And I just felt terrible with my registrars. And a few people had said something quiet. And anyway, in the end, I took the person off. We've done this Vanderbilt stuff recently. And so we're all talking about how you call it out and how you go and speak to the person, take them for a cup of coffee. And so I took her for a cup of coffee. Well, that didn't work. So I took her for another cup of coffee. Well, that didn't work. And there's this pyramid, I think she belongs up at the top. But anyway, I then took her for a wine. Well, that didn't work. So I said, right, it's such a small place, it's very difficult. So I put on in the minutes of our orthopaedic department meeting, so we've got welcome to country, we've got conflict of interest, and then item 3, standing item, every single meeting from now on, we've got behaviour at meetings. And so I also took on the chair's role for a year, which really I didn't need because I've got a lot of other jobs, but I took it on for a year to try and get the behaviour sorted because our hospital had just signed an MOU with the college on this new Operating with Respect program, so I felt I had to do something. So I put it on, and now every meeting it's like, so any problem with any behaviour at meetings, guys, in the last couple of weeks? And they go, oh no, and the person now puts their hand up to say something. Every single meeting, puts their hand up. Doesn't say anything, doesn't yell, doesn't swear. Yeah. It's unbelievable. So you have to be brave and you have to have some strategies to do that. And, all these models, Vanderbilt, whatever, will give you the strategies. But it's about just getting the courage, and it's easier when you get older because you're just kind of like, what does it matter? I'm just going to stand up there and do it now. I'm old. So be brave because, I'm sure you're the good guys.
What about when the people aren't at the meeting anyway? Or if
it's fine when they're not there. It's great.
If they're not at the meeting.
Gen Med and ED have been slagging each other off for years, and they're not getting on, and it's not working. or whatever, or someone who's in the department who doesn't come to the meetings or whatever? What do you do then?
Well, someone who doesn't come to meetings, that is an issue. It's about excellence, it's about the teamwork and where you're trying to get, and if they're not there, they're not contributing, and that is a problem, and you have to put it up as a problem. And have a goal and discuss with them why they're not there. As far as other departments behaving badly, it's again about we have a mission that we are trying to achieve, and you're not contributing to it, and that's a worry for us. And it's about always striving for excellence and not accepting less. And the more you do this, the more things become better and the less horrible it is working. So, although it's a bit of an effort doing it, once it's done, things are much better for everybody. So it is a difficulty. And I mean, certainly as a college, going to units that are very dysfunctional, you say, this is unacceptable. And the staff normally, the director will normally say, yes, I know. And you say, you've got to do something about it. And they said, oh, really? It's going on for so long, I can't bear it, it'll be awful. But in all of our occasions where we have been very tough as a college, and it has improved because we've been determined that it will, it's then been much better for everybody. The next accreditation, everyone is much happier. It really grinds people down, this awful behaviour.
Yeah, it does. And sometimes, you have to take it higher. So we had one we had 2 wrong side surgeries, we had a whole bunch of stuff that had happened that was really bad. And not coming to meetings and not involved in M&M. And, in the end it had to go to APRA and it had to have a review. And that's all horrible. It's absolutely horrible and you don't like doing it. But now he's everyone's best friend and he comes to all the meetings and he's doing peer review. And it's like he hadn't realised how bad it had gotten, like in that spiral. And sometimes that happens and, they have family problems or maybe medical health problems and you don't kind of know what else is going on. And in retrospect, maybe the APRA thing wasn't the best way to go, but we didn't have a college process that was quite as good then. But those are all improving too.
And sometimes people have to retire or leave.
Correct.
It doesn't always resolve. Some of these stories don't have happy endings.
That's right.
All right. Well, one more question. How do we, this is from Sean McManus, who's a college counsellor, so I have to answer this one. But how do we empower GPs to be confident team players? You talked about it starts with the GP.
I think that you have to start right back. I'm a medical educator. That's really what I do. And I think that the thing about medicine is we've got to teach all the right behaviours and all the right things from the very beginning. So it's about the continuum. And, our medical students are older and they're very engaged in their training now, and a lot of them are postgrad, and we need to be modelling good behaviours from the beginning. We shouldn't have bad teachers. The people that are modelling that bad behaviour shouldn't be teaching our medical students. And we need to think about that in our units. And so we need to start right at the beginning, and we need to start teaching them about teamwork and multidisciplinary stuff. And I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. I think when you start looking at, a lot of the teachers are hand-picked now. Certainly in rural, we have these small clinical schools, and the teachers are all hand-picked for this reason, to get people in with the right people and learning good behaviour. So I think you've got to start at the beginning, and then you've got to keep reinforcing it all the way through. And we're going to disaccredit some jobs where things are terrible. We're just going to have to take the hard line in the bad stuff, as you say, but we also need to keep it going through. In surgery, we have a big problem with that pre-vocational space where they're disowned for 4 or 5 years while they're waiting to get onto a program, and that's really bad. It's really bad. So in New South Wales, we have a fantastic program by HEDI, Health Education Training Institute, which looks after all those doctors in the middle, and they're loved again by somebody, because when they're not loved, they learn all the bad stuff. And that's something that hasn't happened in all the states in Australia, and I just happen to chair that as well for HEDI. And so we look after the junior doctors, and they've all got little networks, and we do all sorts of nice skills things. And so I think that's the other thing. We've got to look after the doctors in that space, and we need to, again, it's about finding the champions, finding the people that love doing that. And if you love doing it, you do it well. Right?
We have had lots of discussion about defining the processes and defining, or focusing on the process itself, but ultimately there are people involved, and improving the performance of those people and loving them even,
exactly.
is part of the solution. Don and Charlie, any final comments?
Just one. Trying to think of the guy who's wrote this line, but basically, we live in language. A fish lives in water. You know, I wish I could remember the name of the author, but it's a story of an old fish swimming down a river and two young fish swimming the other way. And as they passed, the old fish said to the younger fish, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And as he passed, one of the younger ones turned to the other and said, "What does he mean by water?" So we live in language the way a fish lives in water, and we create what the world is like by the way we speak and the language we use. So how we play into this space with our relationships with our GPs and how to get them on board. We went out and asked our GPs what they want of us as a hospital. They want to be able to pick up the phone and make one call and find a friend.
Yeah.
They want to be able, if they want to deal with a urological problem, they want to talk to a urologist, orthopaedics, and so it goes. When Elvis leaves the hospital, they want the discharge summary on their desk there and then, and they want to know that if they send a referral for an outpatient appointment, A, we received it, B, what date and time the appointment's been made. We went out to general practices and we got a welcome to country you wouldn't believe. Now my ears are still ringing, and I knew the people and the language was pretty choice. But some of those general practices, one general practice in our district has 2 full-time employees whose only job is scanning faxes they get from us.
Really?
Yeah, now that's just insane. So we've got to work on how do we create a conversation space that matters to them, that helps them get their job done. Everyone wants to be a better, faster doctor. Everyone listens to WIIFM. What's in it for me? So how do we work together? Thank you.
Okay. Charlie?
Well, in another life, I do one weekend in a very rural hospital in an emergency department, and that's been a revelation for me because I ring up registrars and discuss patients with them, and I get 2 sorts of response. I'm commonly ringing just to say, do you want me to send the patient or can I manage them? That's what I'm asking. And I get 2 sorts of registrar. There's the registrar who just continually says to me, if you can't cope with it, you can send it, which was not my question. And I hate it, and it's really awful. So it's about no respect. It's about they're not reading what I'm saying, they're not listening to what I'm saying, and they're demeaning me and undermining me, as opposed to others who say, who answer my question and say, if you're happy, this is the parameters I do, and if it gets outside that, I'll be very happy to take the patient. The 2 responses are so different. And, I'm conscious that there are repeated small insults to GPs all the time. And the fact that they feel unhappy, I think, is not a big surprise.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thanks for that. I think that's been a really fascinating session that, as we said, for the title of this session, Perioperative Medicine is a team game. And I think this is what we need, learning from the real key players of the team and the people who have been masters at it to teach us all how to do it and coach us all better. So please, thank you.
It's Desiree Chappell here. Just a quick reminder, subscribe to Top Med Talk. We're a daily source of news and conversation focused on perioperative care. We bring you all the latest talk from all the major conferences in the perioperative space. We can also be found on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and we now have a free mailing list with special offers and additional goodies for subscribers. Go check us out at topmedtalk.com. That's www.topmedtalk.com.